The myth of the lonely Neanderthal. Imagine a Neanderthal family huddled in a dark cave, just 10 of them battling the Ice Age cold. It's a vivid picture, often painted in books, documentaries, and even some early scientific papers. But this image of Neanderthals living in tiny groups of only 5 or 10 is one of the most misunderstood ideas in anthropology. Far from being isolated loners, Neanderthals thrived in larger groups, around 25 individuals, much like modern humans. The real difference between Neanderthals and modern humans wasn't group size, but the size of their territories. Neanderthals roamed vast landscapes to hunt megafauna, while modern humans, with their knack for hunting smaller game, squeezed more from smaller areas. Let's unpack the evidence, from ancient caves to fossil bones, to set the record straight and explore why this misconception persists. The idea that Neanderthals lived in groups of only 10 comes from early archaeological finds and a touch of romanticism. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, when Neanderthal skeletons were first unearthed in places like the Neander Valley in Germany, scientists found small clusters of bones, sometimes just a handful of individuals. These finds, like the single-family burials at La Ferracie in France, sparked the notion of tiny, tight-knit bands. Popular media ran with it, portraying Neanderthals as rugged, solitary families facing a brutal world. Even some anthropologists speculated that harsh Ice Age conditions forced Neanderthals into small groups to survive scarce resources. But this outdated view ignores the bigger picture, because small burial sites or temporary camps don't tell the whole story. Neanderthals were skilled hunters and social beings, and modern evidence, from cave hearths to genetic studies, shows their groups were larger, typically 20 to 30 individuals. The misconception also overlooks how Neanderthals and modern humans adapted differently to their environments. So, let's explore the evidence that paints a fuller, more vibrant picture of Neanderthal life. To understand Neanderthal group size, we turn to archaeological sites across Europe, where Neanderthals lived from about 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. These sites, combined with studies of their tools, bones, and living spaces, suggest groups of around 25, not 10 individuals. One of the most telling sites is La Côte de Saint-Brelade, a coastal cave on the island of Jersey used by Neanderthals around 180,000 years ago. Excavations uncovered piles of mammoth and woolly rhino bones, evidence of large-scale hunts. Butchering such massive animals, a mammoth could weigh up to 14 tons, required teamwork. Anthropologists estimate that 4 to 8 strong adult male hunters were needed to take down a mammoth, with others processing meat, hides, and bones. A group of just 10, including children and the elderly, couldn't handle this workload. The site's multiple hearths and tool scatters suggest a group of 20 to 30, big enough to coordinate hunts and share labour. In France's Dordogne Valley, the cave of Combe-Grenal offers another clue. Used by Neanderthals between 80,000 and 50,000 years ago, the site has dozens of hearths, each surrounded by tools and animal bones. Archaeologist Paul Mellers, in his book The Neanderthal Legacy, argues that the number and spread of hearths point to a group of 20 to 30. Smaller groups would need fewer fireplaces, and the variety of tools, scrapers, points, and blades, suggest diverse tasks, from hide preparation to meat cutting, requiring a mix of adults, teens, and elders. Farther east, Shanidar Cave in Iraq, occupied around 75,000 to 35,000 years ago, tells a similar story. Famous for its burials, including one individual with healed injuries suggesting caregiving, Shanidar also has evidence of communal living. Multiple hearths, large quantities of animal bones, from goats and deer, and pollen traces, possibly from medicinal plants, indicate a group that hunted, cooked, and cared for each other. Meanwhile, Eric Trinkhaus, a leading Neanderthal expert, estimates groups of 20 to 30 individuals based on such sites, noting that smaller groups couldn't sustain the social and resource demands of Neanderthal life. The Krapina rock shelter in Croatia, dated to about 130,000 years ago, provides skeletal evidence. Over 80 Neanderthal bones from at least 20 individuals were found, along with tools and animal remains. While some argue this was a ritual site, the presence of multiple ages, including children, adults and elders, suggests a residential group. Clive Gamble, in his book The Paleolithic Societies of Europe, uses Krapina to argue for bands of 20 to 30 individuals, big enough to handle daily tasks and maintain social bonds. These sites, from Jersey to Iraq, consistently point to groups of 20 to 30. But why not only 10? A group of 10, for example 4 adults, 4 children and 2 elders, would struggle to hunt megafauna, process carcasses, care for dependents and survive harsh winters. With high mortality rates, an estimated 30 to 50% of Neanderthal infants died, a group of 10 risks extinction after a single bad season. Larger groups of 25 offered resilience, with enough hunters, gatherers and caregivers to thrive. Larger groups could also defend against predators and invaders with other humans or animals. High infant mortality rates in Ice Age Europe also may provide insights into another mystery. Why did Neanderthal women mostly give birth to modern human children rather than Neanderthal man fathering children with modern human women? The answer may lie in the fact that Neanderthal women were more adapted to the cold environment, with lighter skin and better metabolic adaptation for cold, sunless days. Having a healthy mother is the most important factor in the survival of the infant. So a Neanderthal mother, who could better pass on vitamin D through her breast milk, would be more likely to have her babies survive. Beyond archaeology, genetic studies bolster the case for larger groups. Ancient DNA from Neanderthal bones, like those from Vindiger Cave in Croatia, shows low but sufficient genetic diversity. It's not hard to imagine that Neanderthals had genetic adaptations to cold environments, which would have allowed them to go with minimal clothing even in cold weather, such as the Jagan of Patagonia. This adaptation also means they may have needed much more calories than modern humans. A study in Nature by Prufer and colleagues found that Neanderthals avoided inbreeding, implying groups of at least 20, with contact between bands to exchange women, tools, and engage in cultural activities. Like many hunter-gatherer groups, Neanderthal groups were made up of closely related males, while the women more often were unrelated. This makes sense, as men who are closely related tend to get along better compared groups of unrelated males, while women are generally more socially adaptable. In fact, a small group of 10 individuals, isolated for generations, would suffer genetic bottlenecks, reducing survival odds. Demographic models also support larger groups. Jean-Pierre Bocquet-Appel, in a current anthropology paper, used birth and death rates to estimate Neanderthal group size. With high infant mortality and lifespans rarely exceeding 50 years, a group needs 4 to 6 breeding pairs to stay viable. A group of 25, with 8 to 12 adults, fits this model, while 10 is too small to sustain a population over time. If Neanderthals lived in groups of 20 to 30, how did they compare to modern humans who arrived in Europe around 45,000 years ago? Surprisingly, group sizes were similar. Modern human sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, dated to 26,000 years ago, show evidence of bands of 20 to 30, with hearths, burials, and mammoth bone structures. Both human groups needed enough people to hunt, gather, and raise children in Ice Age Europe's brutal climate. The myth of tiny Neanderthal groups may partly come from assuming they were less social or capable than modern humans, but Neanderthals had complex tools, cared for the injured, as seen at Shanidar, and had language. Their social needs, cooperation, conflict resolution and child-rearing, demanded groups just as large as those of modern humans. So if group size wasn't the difference, what was? The answer lies in territory size and resource use. While Neanderthals and modern humans lived in similar-sized groups, their territories differed sharply. Neanderthals relied heavily on megafauna, mammoths, rhinos, bison, requiring vast home ranges to track migrating herds. Modern humans, with their greater resourcefulness, hunted smaller game and foraged more diversely, allowing them to thrive in smaller territories. Neanderthal home ranges, the core areas they used daily, were estimated to be 500 to 1,500 square kilometers, with annual ranges, the total area covered in a year, reaching 2,000 to 5,000 square kilometers. This estimate comes from sites like Mezirik in Ukraine, where mammoth bone structures and flint tools sourced 200 kilometers away suggest wide-ranging mobility. A kilometer is about 2/3 of a mile, so 100 kilometers is about 63 miles. The steppe tundra of Ice Age Europe, with patchy resources, forced Neanderthals to roam far and wide to find herds, flint and wood. For example, at La Côte de Saint-Brelade in France, the sheer volume of megafauna bones implies repeated hunts over a large area, likely 1,000 square kilometers or more. In the site of combe-grenelle tools made from distant flint sources indicate travel across 100 to 200 kilometers, supporting a large annual range. With megafauna like reindeer migrating seasonally, Neanderthals followed, camping in caves or open sites like Abric Romani in Spain, where hearths and camps suggest temporary stops within a broader territory. Modern humans, by contrast, use territories of 200 to 800 square kilometers, sometimes less in resource-rich areas. Sites like Aurignac in France, dated to 35,000 years ago, show modern humans hunted smaller game, hares, birds, deer, alongside megafauna. They also fished and gathered plants, as seen in pollen and bone evidence from Dolny Vestonici. This diversity let them extract more from smaller areas. Modern humans also developed tools including bows and nets, absent in Neanderthal toolkits, making small game hunting efficient. Atlatls, spear throwers, gave them precision for smaller targets. These innovations reduced the need for vast territories, letting groups stay closer to camps. For example, the Gravettian culture, 30,000 to 20,000 years ago, left dense clusters of sites in the Dordogne Valley, spaced 20 to 30 kilometers apart, suggesting smaller, overlapping ranges. Larger territories meant Neanderthals spent more energy traveling and tracking herds. A home range of 1,000 square kilometers has a radius of about 18 kilometers, so daily foraging could mean 20 to 30 kilometers round trips. Modern humans, with ranges as small as 200 square kilometers, a radius of 8 kilometers, travelled less, conserving energy for other tasks like tool-making or socializing. This efficiency may have given modern humans an edge, letting them support similar-sized groups in tighter spaces. Neanderthals' reliance on megafauna also made them vulnerable. A single mammoth kill could feed a group for weeks, but hunts were risky and infrequent. Modern humans, with a broader diet, faced less risk if one resource failed. Over time, this flexibility helped modern humans outcompete Neanderthals, who vanished around 40,000 years ago as climates shifted and megafauna declined. Therefore, with home ranges of 500 to 1,500 square kilometers, Neanderthal groups were spaced farther apart than modern human bands. Using a home range of 1,000 square kilometers modelled as a circle, the radius is 18 kilometers, and the distance between neighbouring group centres is about 36 to 50 kilometers, assuming minimal overlap or slight buffers. In the Dordogne Valley, Neanderthal sites like Le Moustier and La Ferracie are 30 to 40 kilometers apart, supporting this estimate. Walking 40 kilometers in steppe tundra at 5 kilometers per hour might take 8 to 10 hours or 1 to 2 days with rests and terrain challenges. Neanderthals met neighbours for trade, including flint and shells, or mating, as seen in tools from distant sources at Krapina in Croatia. Modern human sites, like those in the Gravettian period, are closer, 20 to 30 kilometers, reflecting smaller territories and denser populations. Modern hunter-gatherers like the Inuit offer parallels. Inuit bands of 20 to 50 individuals use territories of 2,000 to 10,000 square kilometers in Arctic environments, similar to Neanderthals' reliance on large ranges. Humans in the Kalahari Desert live in bands of 20 to 50, but use smaller ranges, around 1,000 square kilometers, due to diverse foraging. Both show that groups below 15 struggle to survive, reinforcing why Neanderthals needed 20 to 30 men, women and children. The group of 10 myth may also reflect temporary hunting parties. At Abric Romani, a large rock shelter located on the north side of the travertine cliff known as Cinglera del Capello near Barcelona, small hearths suggest 5 to 10 people, likely a subgroup of a larger band. These outliers fueled early speculation, but don't represent typical Neanderthal life. Correcting the myth of tiny Neanderthal groups humanizes them. They weren't solitary stragglers, but social beings, living in vibrant bands that hunted, shared, and survived together. Their larger territories, driven by megafauna dependence, highlight their strength and adaptability, even if modern humans' resourcefulness ultimately prevailed. Sites like La Cotte, Combe, Grenal, and Chanidar show us Neanderthal communities, not loners, thriving against the odds. This story also reminds us how science evolves. Early assumptions based on sparse bones gave way to a richer picture as new sites, DNA, and models emerged. Neanderthals, with groups of 25 roaming vast landscapes, were more like us than we once thought. Their legacy, etched in caves and tools, invites us to keep questioning what we think we know. Thanks for watching, and please click the subscribe button and help us get to 100,000 subscribers this year.